Okay, we'll call the May 21, 2025 Finance Committee meeting to order, 6:37. First, I would like to make our land acknowledgement by acknowledging that we gathered together on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, and that we also have an anti-racism statement. The Southern Valley Community Association stands against racism and discrimination of all forms. Okay. So we have myself. Let's see, I'm gonna Taimi. Thanks, Mary, and Jean, and Joel. Anybody
Robb
else?
I think Robb may be coming shortly.
Okay, when he,
But we can get going.
yeah. Okay, so let's see. Any additions to the agenda?
Not for me.
Okay, so we have all in favor of approving the agenda as provided, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And opposed? All right, we've adopted. All right, so I want to thank Taimi for getting out the minutes for March 24th and April 16th. Are there any additions or corrections to the March 24th minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the March 24th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. And the April 16th Finance Committee meeting minutes. Any additions or corrections? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed? All right, we've approved both the March 24th and April 16th Finance Committee meeting minutes. Okay, so first order of business is considering the capital request for Austin Creek Bank repair design and permitting. So I think everyone had a chance to review the history on that back in 2021. With a review in 2023, and it seemed to be fairly stable when we reviewed it in January 2024. But then this last fall, things kind of got going again, and there's been more erosion. And it looks like we need to do something. So the proposal is to come up with a couple different alternatives, I guess, depending on whether or not we can get some financial support from the Fisheries Habitat Enhancement Project folks. So depending on that, how that goes up or down, it may be a 60% or 100% expense.
Do we have
So
any idea how likely that is?
I did not get an indication of how likely that was, and it didn't sound like Tyler had any sense either. They were just going to try it, try to go for it. Did you hear anything else about that, Taimi?
I didn't hear
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Or maybe Joel, did you?
I haven't.
Yeah. Okay, so the proposal is to come up with these designs, possibilities, looking at the damage that's been done from the erosion and different ways to remediate it. So our engineering advisory staff has PNW has put together this recommendation, a proposal for $24,882 for design and permitting to repair the failing Austin Creek bank near the community garden at the recreation corridor. Seems pretty straightforward. I think, we stalled a little bit a little over a year ago because it seemed to be stable, but it has eroded quite a little bit. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to go over there and look at that, but it definitely is encroaching, beginning to encroach on the garden space there.
So I have a question going down to like the estimate number and estimate, no, what is this page? It talks about fisheries engineering and it talks about fisheries engineering again, and it talks about meetings. It's what page number is that? I don't know what page number it is. I can't tell on my thing here.
So it starts on page 6 and then
It goes
Is-
down, so the section that says meetings, it says that Whatcom may drag permitting process out to include SEPA and not accept the FHEP process as stipulated. What kind of impact does that have? Does anybody know? I don't exactly know what that means.
I don't know any of those either, Jean. The only thing I know is that we were hoping that this would kind of stabilize on its own. But that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, and I think it needs to be done. I'm just trying to figure out, is it actually gonna be more fees if we need to do a SEPA evaluation or a SEPA permitting or something like that versus the FHEP process?
Was this,
Okay.
was this Austin Creek erosion, is this the same area that, I think we talked about this a couple months ago? There was
yes,
okay, thank you.
yeah, it's the same one. I think Keith in particular was trying to figure out some way to get around it, but after poking around a little bit, it seemed like this was going to be the most prudent thing to do.
Has it become worse than, we've had quite a bit of rain since we last talked about this. Has it become worse, Rick, that you know of?
I think most of the change occurred November to January, maybe. Yeah, I don't think the last month or two there's been much change, but it's exposed. I think there's an electrical line that goes to one of the pumps for the golf course that's now exposed. It's in a conduit that was inside of the bank, and now it's exposed. And of course, that could wreak a lot of havoc if a big tree or limb gets pushed along there and takes that out. So, and then it's continuing to undermine the walking surface next to the garden. So it's actually undercut quite a bit now.
Well, it sounds like it has, maybe it has, there is more erosion since we last looked at it, maybe.
Yeah, since a year ago, right? Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it needs to be done, but the meetings with, if SEPA is gonna cost, because I know when I was doing a building SEPA, it cost us a little bit more money, we had to do some mitigation because SEPA. And then the hydraulics is also, seems like there could be something in there that could be extra cost too. I'm just trying to get an idea, is there gonna be more? Or maybe that's what this is gonna be determining, is the entire cost, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
This is kind of having Chinook Engineering look at designs and alternative analyses with incorporating hydraulic modeling
Right.
with the 60% and 100% construction drawings. And Chinook Engineering was going to explore using the fisheries enhancement, fisheries habitat enhancement project approach to try and reduce costs, the permitting
Right.
costs.
But as I
Yeah.
kind of look at it over and over again, as I'm sitting here listening to you, um, and because I kind of knew this was coming, I probably just scanned it and didn't look at it as close as I could have, but, what, and what I think is in here is that they're going to do all of those things with a zero cost, that the $18,000 will include those things, and those will not be an additional cost, because it says, bank stabilization with LWM and FHEP approach. And further down, they mention FHEP. So I think that those are included at no extra cost. Does that
Right.
make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I just, I didn't know if the SEPA was gonna impact it, or if then the next line, the hydraulic modeling, the fee estimate excludes any flood zero rise memorandums that may arise from Whatcom County requests. But I guess, I'm sorry, maybe I'm out of line here, because perhaps this is just trying to figure all that out at this point and getting the cost for those things. And
Yeah,
they'll include the cost of SEPA if we need it, and they'll include the cost of the flood zero rise memorandums if we need it.
yeah, I think my understanding is more along your initial concern that because there isn't a dollar amount for the SEPA on the first, if you go to the Chinook Engineering note to us, I, I guess it's not an extra amount. They're just anticipating that
Okay,
Whatcom, I guess it's Whatcom County may, it just says Whatcom, may drag it out. I think they're I'm hoping they're referring to the timeline, not to the cost. That it's kind of um, an all-inclusive kind of bid here that
Okay.
lists these other things as not being extra.
okay. But if they're extra, they'll include them in a quote. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it could have been probably explained a little bit better.
Why are you still here?
Sorry.
Um, okay, so yeah, my impression was that it was kind of an all-inclusive bid, and that there's some ancillary costs, the contingency and permit fees and all that stuff, that oversight by PNW to make it all happen. So there's really two requests. One is for the total amount, and one is for the general manager to execute the contract with Chinook Engineering.
I guess I didn't realize Austin Creek there's fish habitat in Austin Creek?
Yeah, no, it's considered a migratory fish pathway, I believe.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah,
From time to time, you'll see a fish in it.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's why that one bridge and culvert last year was so expensive, is they had to enlarge it to accommodate the potential for fish to go upstream, whatever creek that was. I don't know if it was Austin or Beaver or whatever it was up there. Um, it's a big, beautiful culvert. It's like 6 or 8 feet, I don't know, or more. But And that's why it costs like $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it was. So yes, they are considered migratory fish, although um, the fish numbers seem to be waning. Okay, any other thoughts or questions about that I probably can't answer, but so I think I've to summarize the requests. I think I'll jump to the or does somebody want to read the motion one? I can do it.
You can
Motion
go
one,
ahead.
move that the Board of Directors approve the allocation of $24,882 from SURF for the 2025 Austin Creek Bank Repair Design and Permitting Project. Please recognize that this is a recommendation of the Finance Committee to the board, not. Yeah,
Second.
okay.
Rob, you can be the second.
Okay,
Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
aye,
And
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion one recommendation is approved. Motion two, move that the Board of Directors,
No,
that the
fine.
Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Directors authorization of the General Manager to execute Chinook Engineering's proposal dated January 30th, 2025 in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed? Okay, motion to recommendation is approved. Okay. The next is is actually a group of things from our reserve study, but they all include work on the turf care building remodeling project. So it was determined apparently that with the HVAC remodel replacement, some of the design and permitting, and then multiple aspects of the turf care building. It was determined that actually the roof and the gutter does not need to be replaced right at this time, and is going to be pushed out for a year or two. Might as well get as much mileage out of those parts of the building as we can. So it will be reevaluated on a year-to-year basis and determine when the best time to do that is. So you probably saw all the drawings. Let's see, I was gonna. And a list of equipment for that. So it includes, as near as I can tell, it includes some pretty extensive repairs of the turf building, painting it, an overhead door replacement. When they redo the bathroom to make it ADA compliant, they have to reconfigure a little bit of the rooms, the change room, and I think office or work, a break room, something like that. So it's not quite straightforward because they have to enlarge the restroom, it looks like.
Anybody know what the drying room is?
I think it's I think it's when they come in out of the wet, they hang up wet clothes and change into
That's what I
dry
was
up.
thinking, but that just
Yeah.
seemed too easy an answer.
Yeah, there's a lot of water, a lot of months of the year down there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the bathroom gets quite large. There's a shower in there, the break room.
This comment may not be in the purview of the finance committee, but if they're doing some remodeling down there, I really wish maybe there's some extra money they might request, but the front of their yard outside by the road, there's just a lot of equipment and items out there, pallets.
Mhm.
I wish they would go through that and clean that area up. It just looks kind of clutterish to me.
Yeah,
It could be things that they need to do their work, but it's just kind of, it doesn't, it is, yeah, I just wish they'd take a look at cleaning up out there.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, Rob. It does look a little unattended, I guess. Maybe
Yeah,
is one way to say it.
maybe some
Um,
organization.
yeah. Um, I'll make a note to see if um,
If they need that stuff, even if they put that, lattice through the fence to kind of, how you
Yes,
can kind of wrap that plastic back and forth in like a
yes.
weave, just to
yeah,
hide it a bit.
yeah.
It just looks unorganized, kind of
It
cluttered.
does.
So on this
Yeah,
request, oh, sorry.
Mhm. Yeah, no,
I
go
should-
ahead, Gene.
Let's say on this request, there's just a total sum that's being asked to do all these different things. Is there a breakdown, a cost breakdown to like what's, the bathroom remodel is gonna cost or what the
Ye-
exterior painting or whatever they're gonna do out there or the drawing room is gonna cost? Is there
Yes,
like a
yes.
breakdown?
So it is. So on the reserve study, it lists out, these things are all listed in 2025, including the roof and gutters that aren't going to happen this year. But
Okay,
so what I have are lines on the surf, 123 through 135 on that reserve study. And 130 and 132 are the gutters and the roof. So
okay.
those would be excluded. But if you can, I think we circulated or shared that reserve study, right, that everybody had from the budget presentation last November. So if you look under lines 123 to 135 on the reserve study, you'll see that they're listed under 2025. And they do have, so like the paint is listed at 12,979. The Turk building repairs listed at 48,672. The
Okay, now
overhead, yeah,
that's okay. I've got the surf here. I didn't realize that's where it was, but I just didn't know how they were gonna break up the money and make sure somebody like, looked at what was being paid for what different areas. That's all.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Well, I think they probably, you know, will get bids from a contractor that will kind of do them as a grouping, a project, or however that oversight.
right, but
Uh,
they thought about what each should cost, or at least an
yes,
estimate about what
yes,
each should cost. Okay,
that's right. So it has, based on, and I think Joel's, what is it? It was like when, like this week or last week, the reserve specialists were in taking inventory again of what we have and how things are looking and whether our reserve studies adequately funded or not in terms of estimating the cost of replacing them in the timeframes. And so the replacement cost, once it's established, in like get reestablished this year, then incrementally, I think the average is what is it 4%, Joel, that's added incrementally each year to each of those capital assets until it's time for it to be replaced.
Yeah, that's right, 4%.
4%. So it automatically increases over time. And so the numbers that we have listed in our reserve study have been previously were much lower, but over each year gets increased by 4%. And yeah, some numbers are pretty close. Some of them are too high, some of them are too low. And it fortunately, most of the time it tends to average out, right, Joel?
Yeah, unless we get some, like the docks, as a perfect example, where it came back, with the engineering bids being more expensive than what was on the reserve study.
Yeah, right, right. So
And
there's
like you said, some items have actually gone down.
yeah, like the painting of the Welcome Center, that was like, gosh, only about half of what was estimated,
Oh,
I think.
okay.
And yet there was some golf equipment that was like 15 or 18,000 more. So I don't, so it's just, it's a best guess, it's kind of, you gotta have some number. So you pick what it is, you figure out what it costs to replace it today, and you need to, you're gonna need to replace it in 10 years, and you just incrementally increase it 4% and hope inflation's close to that. As
Yeah.
far as I can tell. And then you have the reserve studies that, I don't know, do they adjust those numbers, Joel, when they come in, right? Every
Every
3 years or
Yeah,
every year? Yeah, every 3 years. So,
every 3 years.
yeah, so we'll find out how close we are when we get our reserve study later this summer, I think, huh?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Because the
So,
on-site,
yeah,
of course, he's done with his on-site inspection.
right. Did they finish that up
Yeah,
last week? Yeah. Mhm.
last
So,
week.
yeah, so they'll have to go back and write up the report, and then they send it back to us. But it's a fair question, Gene. It's like, okay, it's a big a big chunk of money that's not really broken down. And I wish they would have done a little more of that in that proposal, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's helpful. I probably should have looked there. I didn't think to look at I have it right here in my hand, so.
oh,
no.
okay, oh, good. Yeah. So it looks like it's yeah. Hopefully all those numbers come out. And because of that, I think partly because that one piece of equipment that was quite a bit over is partly why we're trying to stretch out the life of the roof and the gutters and try to average things out expense wise for the year. All right, so even though originally we had budgeted for $141,993 by holding back the roof and gutter replacement, the actual request is only $116,785. So that will take care of all the rest of the turf care building remodeling project. Okay, so any other questions about the turf care remodel project?
Rick, you want me to make the motion?
Oh, sure. That'd be great, Rob.
Okay, so move that the finance committee recommends the SVCA Board of Directors approve the allocation of $116,785 from SERV for the turf care building remodel project.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye,
Aye.
And opposed? All right. We have
Unanimous.
approved, yep, unanimous. We have approved recommending to the board that they approve this allocation. Okay, so one of the policies that the board has is that a compilation of all the contracts for the year are presented to the board. I think it's supposed to be shortly after the AGM, but with the transition of Joanne leaving and Michael coming on and everything, things kind of were in a plus throw on top of the bomb cyclone on top of that, and things were kind of discombobulated. So the next few pages are the beginnings of the compilation of contracts that SVCA has and is in the process of renewing as they come due for renewal or replacement. We hope to have another column that will show the expense involved in these contracts, but it's still in process or in a progress state. You have any idea when that might be completed, Joel? Maybe by the next meeting, huh?
Perhaps, just in terms of, like you said, for showing like a capital project, what you're asking for and what's on the reserve study and I mean on the 10-year capital plan and whether or not that's over or under that amount. Is that basically what you're?
Oh, well, no, so I was looking at so on the last 3 pages of the agenda are a listing of our contracts, operational contracts.
Yeah, so basically at this point, so the contract list has been put together. Now at this point, Nikki and Morgan are working on getting all of the actual contracts from the managers themselves.
Are there
Yeah,
still
so
more
one-
that's gonna be added to the list, Joel?
You're talking about added to the list for next
Well,
finance
just,
committee?
is this a complete list of our contracts, or are they still putting together some more information and will it be expanded?
That list right there is actually a pretty good listing of it. There could be a couple more that could be added, but right now what Nikki and Morgan, what they're working on is getting the actual firm dollar amounts and contracts themselves. Copies from the various managers who have them.
And I see that they have color coded the contracts. So we've got orange, blue, beige, yellow, green, gray, and white.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Yeah, so it was basically modeled off of the last time we submitted this contract list. Back, I believe, in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the rows, or excuse me, the columns over at the extreme right there, it says initiation, initial expiration. A lot of those dates are several years ago. Is that just because this thing was copied out of a file and brought over, and mainly it's just to identify the contractors?
I'm gonna pull that up so I can see what you're looking at.
Yeah, the columns over on the extreme right, Joel, it says initiation and initial expiration. Some of these dates are come and gone.
Yeah.
Like insurance.
Yeah, I noticed. Go ahead.
Well, sorry, Taimi, I just, insurance is showing 2026 or 2025, but the first contractors it's saying it's expired. First one's expired.
Well, that was a 5-year lease and it was 5 years, so I, I think it may have actually expired. The
Okay.
contract term, do you see the under contract term, the next column left of those,
Yes.
the initiation? So
Yeah.
it said a 60-month lease.
So it looks like maybe we want to renew that or something again. It expired in 2019. It's,
Well, we may not be, oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, there may have been an interim,
yeah,
another 5-year lease, right?
Which,
Yeah.
what addendum are you looking at on here?
This is at the end of the agenda packet, the agenda file
Okay,
is where I found it.
yes,
It says it's called operational contract listing.
Yeah.
So I think like what Robert, you're saying, like when I'm seeing that too, like the initial expiration, it doesn't really matter when the initial expiration is. It matters when does it expire now? Like
Mhm.
if it expired, that first one, if it expired in 2019, did we renew it? Or do we have to,
So in
or
the
do we have
second
to do
column,
that?
it's listing, do we need to renew it next year? And it looks like on that one, it says yes,
yeah,
right? So it may be that, uh,
okay, I've got it now. So now what column? You're looking at the initial expiration?
yes,
yeah, yeah. There's a number of these contracts when you, as I'm actually on another, on my phone actually. And as I scroll down, Joel, I see that there's some of these contracts, the initial expiration has come and gone. And then it's indicating, yeah, do we want to renew it? Renew in 2026. It says yes. So I guess what I'm wondering is are these contracts that have expired and then going forward, staff is realizing, no, we need to renew this contract.
Yeah, so anything here like security solutions, of course, I'm looking at some of these things. So if this contract, if it's going to be one of two things, either if the contract is not in use, so meaning if a manager told us, or in this case told Nikki or Morgan to put this on this contract listing, once we get these sorts of contracts, like for these things with initial expiration dates that have expired, if this, it's one of two things, either it should just be removed from this list, or the date should just be updated with the existing contract right now.
Okay. Yeah,
But
okay.
there will still be some, so basically, this is kind of, you could think of this as a rough draft. So
Sure.
this is like a work in progress at this point.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
So like, for example, like on the first page, I solved initial expiration April 8th, 2019. You know, obviously this is not a contract that expired and we haven't renewed. We use iSolved right now. So this is just a line item that needs to be touched up.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, because like I'm looking at all this, further down, like there's a whole lot in Barron heating and air conditioning that those all initially expired in 2018. So like
Yeah.
you said, this is a draft. You guys are working on
Yeah.
it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, like when this contract, when it was pushed up, to like Michael to add to the agenda, at this point, this was not in any way like a complete set of like a listing, like the final listing. This was more of a, you could think of it like a placeholder, like kind of here's the state of it at this point, and then
yeah,
we're working on
yeah.
it.
That's good. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah. If
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, it's just kind of, yeah, I guess we just want to be aware of the fact that there are ongoing contracts kind of in the background, and it's part of our operational costs. And I think it's helpful for the finance committee to be aware of, where our money's going. And here's an example of a bunch of the items that dollars coming in, dollars going out, to help run the operation of the association. So Yeah, just something to keep in mind for now. We'll probably take a deeper look at it in a month or two when it's more complete.
Right.
Okay, so then I think that brings us to, let's see, let me get my Joel's presentation on our financial statements.
You just pull this up here.
So this was listed as an addendum on the finance committee
Because
website.
everyone can see the financial statements right here.
Uh-huh, yeah, I've got it on my
Okay.
laptop too, iPad.
So obviously the first page of this is the balance sheet. Now the real main change on the balance sheet, as you can remember last month when we did this, one of the things the finance committee recommended to approve, and then the board subsequently approved it right afterwards, was reclassifying those November tree cleanup costs, the hazardous tree removals.
Right.
That and as that capital memo was written, that reclassification memo, I guess maybe we should call it. So basically the wording of that memo was that it was to be reclassed back in the periods in which we incurred those costs. So the costs hit the GL, hit the general ledger, hit the financial statements in December of 2024. We had some that hit in January, February, March, April, and we even received an invoice that is hit in May that they said related to the November 2024 storm cleanup costs. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is I also pointed out the last time, if you might recall, but basically I was showing you guys what was going to happen, where the money would come from. So so the board approved it. So everything has been reclassed back into, so basically I went back into time to December of 2024 and reclassed all of those storm cleanup costs, the hazardous tree cleanup costs, just as though that never went to capital, that it all happened in operations back in December. So I went back into December and obviously January, February, March as well. And so the cash amounts right here, so like December 31, 2024, for cash, obviously that amount has gone down. The cash in 2025 has gone down as well. And the reason why is because it has reimbursed SURF and roads for those amounts. So when these costs went through initially, they hit both roads and SURF. That's where the money came from. And those are the funds that we took the money out of to do that. And since all of this was approved to reclass it or to reclassify these expenses and these cleanup costs for hazardous trees. So then I went back into December, and then basically I changed all of those expenses to be, instead of coming from roads and SURF, now it comes from operations, ACC security. So in doing that, then I'm taking cash out of operations to reimburse both SURF and roads, since SURF and roads initially paid for it. But it's basically, that's the standard way that it would do it. I mean, just as an example, let's just say that initially I had an expense that went to SURF. We'll just forget about whether it's capital or whatever. Let's just say the board approved a $1,000 expense to come from SURF. So then when the expense is paid for, then SURF cash would have gone down by $1,000. A SURF expense or a SURF capital project expenditure would go up in that case. And then if the board came back and said, oh, wait a minute, we wanted that to come from operations, not capital, then I would essentially do the opposite. Now the expense would be taken away from capital, and then now that expense would go to operations, and in return, money would come out of operations and pay back SURF in this example. And so that's essentially what happened here. And I'm going to quickly, so if you went back and looked at the like December statements, even January, February, you'd see it's actually in this first row, this regulatory compliance. You would see that's where tree costs were hitting. Now you don't see it anymore. They're zeroed out because where are those tree costs now? They're in, actually they're in this line item right here under CCR, or excuse me, they're still in regulatory compliance, but let me re-highlight this. So instead of being, like, for example, under the capital reserves, that dollar amount, now it's been transferred into the operations column is where it's at. And you'll see once I go through this, but that just keep that in mind, that money came out of operating, out of the operating fund, cash fund, and that money went to reimburse both SURF and roads for those tree costs. And that's the main takeaway from the balance sheet. And you'll see once we scroll through the income statement here. So looking at the March 2025 income statement right here, the bottom, we'll just go right to the bottom line. So the net income, $170,247. At the end of March of 2024, it was $80,505. There are a couple differences here between those two numbers that I'll get into here in just a second. But you can see the collection rate for year-to-date collection rate through the end of March is 95.7%. Year-to-date collection rate at the end of March 2024 was 96%. So we're in the ballpark of pretty much fairly close to where we were last year at the end of March. I've already calculated the April collection rate, and the collection rate for April, so it went up to 96.5%. At the end of April of 2024 is 96.8%. So there's still that basically 0.3% spread between the 2 months, as is the case in March, but it's still within the ballpark of where it was the year before. So kind of like what I said back in January, the collection rate will edge up from January, and that's exactly what it's doing. We budgeted for a 95% collection rate for the year. And I've said this before, I'll just quickly say it again real quick. So we get to the end of December of 2025, and for every 1% that we're over 95%. So like if we finish out the year with 96%, that means ops will get another 28,561, SURF would get another 14,463, roads get another 14,875, mailboxes another 266. If you finish out the 97% collection rate, you could double those numbers, so on and so forth. Obviously, we could only finish out at 100%, but so we're fairly similar to where we were the year before collection-wise, which is good. Before I move on to this and get into like the cash reserve page or the departmental, basically, income statement, you can think about it like that. So I did point out that the net income at the end of March of 2025 is $170,247. And then I said at the end of March of 2024 is $80,505. So initially, when you look at it, it's like, oh, wow, we have a lot more net income than we did at the end of March of 2024. Now there's the big reason behind that is the marina income right here. You can see the marina revenue. So 208,304. So we got a lot of, which is good. We got a lot of renewals that came in March, heck of a lot of renewals over March of the previous year. So March of the previous year, we had, just pulling this off of the March 2024 statement. So it looks, so we had marina income of marina revenue of 33,258 versus 208,304. So that's an additional, so we had an additional $175,000 in marina renewals in March of 2025 year to date than we had in March of 2024, meaning more people paid this year up front than they did last year. So
Didn't we moved the renewal date up though too, didn't we?
I believe so.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so I think it was March 31st was the cutoff this year. And last year it was a month or two later.
Yeah. So with the net income of 170,000, as I pointed out, we had another $175,000 more in marina revenues in March 2025 versus March 2024. So if we try to make an apples to apples comparison, this is what I'm going at, is if I strip that away, then you can see if I took 175,000 of revenue out of here, we'd have you can think of it as a net loss of $5,000 is what we would have, versus the year before it was 80,505. So when you start kind of normalizing these numbers or basically adjusting things to make things a little more comparable, it's approximately about $80,000 less, this year than last year at the end of March of 2024. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One reason is the golf revenue was, it's approximately $33,083 year to date less at the end of March than they were at the end of March of 2024. We have, let's see here. So this line item right here, contracted professional services, we have about just rounding it $21,000 and that HR consultant contract that you guys approved. So paying that versus we didn't have that sort of cash outlay at the end of March of 2024. So basically, when you start to add a couple of those items together, if you subtract that away, then we're about kind of $30,000 difference, meaning that those two things didn't happen.
Joel, you talked about the that HR contract that we have that cost us more money. That was supposed to save us money in legal. As you're going by, where's the legal expenses?
Okay, so the legal expenses are in
There. Okay.
The same,
yeah, they're in the rate utility compliance line item. Actually, if I just go right to so legal expenses are in common costs. So basically this is where they're at. So you can see that year to date, they're 43,524. I can tell you year to date at the end of March. Oh, wow. So actually pretty close to the end of March of 2024, we were 43,089. So yeah, see, it's saving us money. No, actually it's cost us a little more. Sorry.
Oh, we've had some other legal expenses though,
Yeah.
in terms of
Yes.
the kind of foreclosures, right? The foreclosure.
Yeah.
And a couple other things.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, yes.
Yeah.
I'll go a little more into golf just a moment once we go to the departmental income statement. We'll just quickly go ahead here to the reserve cash balance page. Okay, so let's just start out with these beginning cash balances. These have been adjusted. So obviously surf and roads are both higher than what they were. If you look at if I go back and look at let's look at January. So like January and February statements, it said net available cash at 12/31/2024 was 3,074,179. Now, well, let's look at roads. That stands out a little more. Roads, it was 1,875,442. Now it's, as you can see, 2,102,139, and that's because of those expenses that have been transferred away from roads and now put into operations. And then by doing that, cash came from operations back into roads to make up for that. And it's the same thing happened with surf. And the big takeaway from doing those things, from transferring those expenses back to operations, moving the cash back from operations to surf and roads to pay those expenses back because of that transfer, is this has now put us back on track with our 10-year capital plan. Because when we did the 10-year capital plan last year, none of that accounted for a November bomb cyclone that obviously no one foresaw at that point. But so when we were taking money out of surf and roads, that was kind of starting to pull us a little off track from the 10-year plan, but now we're back as though that never happened in a sense for the 10-year planning purposes. Meaning when you look at both surf and roads, those 10-year spreadsheets that you have, is the cash balances have now been restored. Okay, so in the past, obviously I've explained basically how this spreadsheet functions. You've got your dues revenue coming in, you've got your investment or interest income coming in here. You have a couple of small things like sale of assets and then down below the big numbers, the 9-month outlook. This is the dues, like for example, for SURF, 1,030,494. This is looking at 9 months. This is what we project. This is what we budgeted. You could think of it that way. So we budgeted 9 months of SURF dues revenue at 95% collection rate. Is what you're looking at. And then the next big line item, SURF loan payments going out, 249,780, and the obligated expenses holding. So I'll just turn to this page right here. So that 833,247 obligated expenses holding, remember that from SURF. And here's the number right here, 833,247. This is just a page right here that's now showing you everything the board has approved. So anything on here, the board obviously has to approve it. And a lot of these are, you can see, have closed marked next to them already. We're in the process of closing these out and finalizing them in the fixed asset ledger. But obviously, since it's closed, there is nothing now planned to come from this closed line item, as nothing should be coming from it. You have a couple things right here in case anyone's wondering, like this adult center furnace and water heater replacement. By the time the last check was cut to pay for this stuff, you'll see that it's over budget from what the board approved by 2,166. And just like this footnote here says, if anyone's wondering what becomes of that, then what we do is when we close this out, then I will close that difference to operations. So SURF will get reimbursed for this 2,166, and that expense will also go to operation. Unless the board for some reason wants to do a change order for 2,166, which I doubt they want to do for that sort of small dollar amount. Okay, another good thing too, since I'm on this, let's go to roads first. Since I'm on this page, now we're looking at roads, but you see this line item right here, this roadside tree removal, November storm response, GL 8004. So you'll notice that's been marked closed, and board approved amount has now been changed to 0 since when the board approved to reclassify these expenses. Essentially, what was going on was now there's no approved money to come from this line item. So the board approved amount is 0. Total invoice is now 0 because I transferred all those expenses back to operations. But so you can still see this on there. So the old GL was 8004 for this, for roads. But the same thing going on here with roads. All of these items on here, the board approved. And then it's just basically board approved amount, like for example, this design permit for 2026 road project. Total invoice, nothing so far, nothing has come in yet. So that means total funds obligated to be spent, 41,888, since we're still assuming we'll spend all of that. Then all of those get added up and come up to 1.5 million. You can see that another huge dollar amount in here are the 2 bridges that got approved that now increase this 9924.6 project code. And you can see approval date here, February 22nd, 2024, and March 27th, 2025. So the good thing about those, if anyone's wondering, like in the future, like how much really what actually got approved or whatever, for what dollar amount, is this really right? You could go back to that board agenda on February 26, 2024. You could see that dollar amount that was approved. And then you could see the additional approved amount on March 27th, 2025, and you would see those dollar amounts do indeed come up to 1,219,468. And obviously, total invoice so far, 100,219. obligated funds now left over to spend on this approved amount, 1,119,249. So that 1,531,721 is right here.
Mhm.
So the bottom line with these numbers is after this first surf, this $600,000 amount, that essentially what we're saying is we would not like this cash balance in surf to drop below 600,000. So then we're saying, well, we're going to subtract that away since it's not usable in a sense. Now you have the projected net usable cash at the end of 2025 of 2,658,925 for surf. And then in relation to, say, like at the end of March of 2024 was 1.88 million. For roads, you know, it's 1 million, 1.44 million. Think about it like that. At the end of March of 2024 is 1.62 million. And these amounts for both board density and mailboxes, those have gone up because it's obviously mailbox. We're not spending anything out of it right now. It's just dues amounts going in. Their monthly dues amounts and interest. This is just interest amount going into board density reduction. Emergency operations, interest amount increasing this, since that's the only thing going into emergency ops right now is just interest that's earned on these accounts. And obviously with UDR, what goes in here is both the interest earned on the UDR accounts plus the past dues, operating dues that people paid in 2025. So if someone was paying their dues related to 2024 or before 2024, the operating component of that goes into this UDR account. And okay, so at the end of March of 2024, the UDR was 293,325. It is now 351,850. So when we do like which we will do, a UDR tree request, it'll come from this balance right here. And that this open capital project report, the last page of this report, shows the UDR page and all the projects that make up the obligated balances. So I'll get into this now. We'll just go to this year-to-date income statement. So you're looking at the income statement again. It's just now broken down by department. It's displayed by what department contributed what. Like there's that $170,247 in net income. And you can see, like, we'll just point out Marina again. Here's Marina. So you can see actual revenue, 208,629 through March, and through April, it looks like we've also received another about 14,600 in like kayak renewals, fees, and dry, other dock fees, whether it's wet slips or dry slips. And we also received renewals in May as well. So, so let's go ahead and focus on golf here. So the good news the bad news with golf, which is followed by good news, is so you can see the actual revenue year to date through March of golf, 268,271. So the revenue at the end of March of 2024 year to date was 301,354. So the revenue is down by $33,083 at the end of March of 2025 versus March 2024. Now, so but the good thing is looking at April. So instead of being down $33,083 at the end of March versus at the end of year-to-date March of 2024, at the end of April 2025 versus at the end of April 2024, that difference has now gone from $33,083 to about $370. So they've really made up ground. So that $33,000 hit to the income statement because of the shortfall in revenue through March has been totally made up. And in April, they're pretty dang neck and neck with where they were at the end of April 2024 revenue wise. So then the expenses for golf, actual salary benefits, 169,400 plus all other expenses, 123,073. That means total golf expenses, 289,673. At the end of March 2024 is 260,607. So their expenses are up by approximately 29,000, but that's expected for the expenses to be up, especially with the increase in salaries and just raw material costs and so on and so forth. So bottom line, net income for at the end of March is net loss 21,402. At the end of March of 2024 is 40,747. If, like, for example, if they made up for that $33,000 shortfall in revenue, if they did that in March, then obviously instead of a net loss, then they'd have a positive amount by about 10,000 or so, 10, 11, 12,000. So golf is turning around in terms of revenue wise. And-
Joel, like you said
Okay.
last month that they had that double pay period. Is that still affecting those numbers, or have we moved on past that?
Oh, no, actually, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was just about to mention, like, the last couple of months of how I've been talking about exactly what Taimi said about the multiple pay periods going on in January that affects it. The good thing is now that we're into March versus March of last. So March of last year had the 3 pay periods in that month. So now since we got to the end of March, now it's apples to apples comparison when you compare March of 2025 year to date with March of 2024 year to date. So that's the good thing at that point. So that the difference in the number of payrolls that happened January this year versus January the prior year, that all gets washed away since March of 2024 had the 3 payrolls. So now we have, so what I'm getting at is year to date, we have as many payrolls in the end of March of 2025 as we did at the end of March of 2024. And this, the next month is August that we have 3 payrolls. Last year, August also had 3 payrolls. So the difference in the payrolls will not be a concern again for the rest of the year. I think what I'll do too is I'm going to quickly show you I'm going to go to the ACC security page where the hazardous tree removal is. And so these 2 line items there's a normal line item, GL 6165 hazardous tree removal. So I have added 2 additional GLs. This GL 6166, you'll see this. You probably will not see the 6167 this year. That only applies to 2024. But GL 6166 says November 2024 storm common area tree removal. So I'm splitting these out intentionally. So in the future, if anyone looked back at, say, like December 2024 and then any of 2025, you would be able to see how much of tree removal was because of that storm that happened in November 2024. Meaning I didn't just dump it all into this 6165 hazardous tree removal. If I did that, then it would start to get lost in terms of how much of that the tree removal was because of just that one storm event, or was it just trees in general? Now, like if I were to pull the December 2024 financial statements right now, reprint it and give it to someone, they would see 6165 hazardous tree removal, 6166 November 2024 storm common area tree removal. And then they'd also see 6167, which says November 2024 roads tree removal. And this is also contributing to the over budget amount at the end of March 2025, because you can see right here we do have $100,000 budgeted for 6165. So at this point, we're only over by about $510 budget-wise for GL 6165. But since I put these are expenses that, by the way, were incurred in 2025, but they relate to that 2024 storm event. So that's why it's charged in 2025. But since $30,029 rounded was attributable to that November storm cleanup cost for surf-related common area trees. I'll stop calling it surf related. I'll just call it now common area tree removal related to that because of that November storm. That's why it's now in this GL 6166 bucket line item. But obviously there's no budget for this. So then this automatically creates an over budget amount in this line item by 30,028. So if I go back to these financial statements, see how it says we're over a budget by 43,477. Well, you could, in a sense, you could subtract 30,000 away from that. Now we're over a budget by technically, about 13,477. Especially when you would conceivably treat these two kind of as one amount for that $100,000 amount that was approved for tree removal in 2025. Which brings up another point. So we have $100,000 budgeted for the annual budget for hazardous tree removal. So at the end of, well, I can tell you at the end of right now, year to date through May, so we had 38,360 in normal hazardous tree removal, and we have another 88,200 and approximately $37 related to that November storm tree removal. So now we're up to, if you combine those two together in May so far, we're up to 126,597, meaning we're over budget from this annual budget for trees by close to 27,000. So we will go to the board as we've done in prior years as well for a UDR request for more money for trees. But at this point, I don't, of course, I can't really say that, oh, we're totally done with any of these tree removal costs that could relate to that November storm, but hopefully we're getting close to being done with that. And then all the future tree removals will just be your normal standard tree removals. So that really isn't much better news anyway. So we're tree removals related to that storm.
But as we're looking to start building the budget for next year, I think we all are aware that we're going to need to bump up that hazardous tree removal budgeted line item because 100,000 just isn't doing it. It
Yeah.
probably more realistically is what, 2 or 250?
Yeah, that would be more realistic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So as Rick said, when we putting together the 2026 budget, we will look to really beat that GL 6165 up. And basically by increasing this line item, then we won't be turning to UDRs much to pay for this.
Right.
But it just, yeah, unfortunately out here at Sun Valley, trees have really become an expensive line item, especially over the last handful of years, like 5 years or so.
It's a little scary because it's an aging forest and it's not going to get better over the next few years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, in a lot of ways, we've been fairly fortunate. It hasn't been more. I think Michael was sharing that Sincadia, they had a $500,000 line item for trees. 500,000.
Yeah, looking back at through the financial statements. So like last year through April, we had about $60,000 in hazardous tree removal costs incurred. If I just clip this off at April and look at this, so we have and I'm adding the two line items to both the hazardous tree and the November, because that November 2024 storm common area and tree removal line item, that's when it really took the big jump, 78,988.
Yeah.
But So now it's gone up to, 111,362. So so it's 111,362 at the end of April 2025 and tree removal cost versus the year before at 60,000.
Yeah, double,
Yeah.
roughly double,
One of those tree removals was,
over 50,000.
it was like 48,000.
Yeah.
So that was, that's unusual. That's the highest that I've seen since I've been here
Yeah.
on one tree removal.
Yeah, I think going forward in the future, we can't think of it as being unusual, though.
Yeah.
I think you're right. That's right.
That
So-
particular one had a lot of rocks that
Yeah,
could have
okay.
fallen on the house as well, so that,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was-
hopefully we never have that one again.
Yeah,
but-
that was really unusual.
Well, yeah, it had to do with the very steep terrain
Yeah,
of the tree being up above the house. So if something went haywire, and they had to do a lot of extra safety mitigation to just in case something broke loose, that it didn't wipe out that house.
What gate was that
Um,
in?
then we had one of
I
the
th-
tree removals,
up-
because that storm was at gate 2 where we had to bring a crane in for it, and that was, like 25,000 plus for that.
Yeah, I think it was, was that $48,000 tree in gate 9?
I'm not quite sure exactly what gate.
I don't yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we
Not
just have a
sure.
lot of steep terrain and stuff,
Yeah.
so, I just,
Yep.
gotta
Well, and
be aware of it.
as more new homes are constructed, some trees are taken out to make room for the houses. It changes the whole wind pattern and stability, and so things become more tenuous on those
You know,
steeper slopes, especially.
At least since I've been here, that one tree removal was quite an outlier, from
Mm-hmm.
any of the other tree removals.
Yeah. Well, I was glad to see golf income rebound.
Yeah.
I was concerned not only with the weather, but with the current political. I mean, because there've been some articles about, downtown Blaine suffering a 40% decrease in busyness attributed to lack or decreasing amount of Canadian visitors, and downtown Bellingham a 20% decrease through the first quarter, I think, of this year. And so that's a concern to me, but I'm glad to see that it's rebounded. I don't know how much of it's more local and less Canadian, or if it's just a normal mix. But anyway, it's good to see that's rebounding. I think as weather improves, it should continue to bring in good numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you golf, Joel, or I don't think Taimi does, but there are a lot of Canadians that come down here that don't live down here, that just come down here to golf.
Yeah.
It's usually cheaper down here, and so there's an incentive for them to come, but I did hear from a few people that they weren't gonna come down. But hopefully, like you said, Rick, that they'll still enjoy our golf course here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over the last week or so, when I've been going back and forth across the border, it's gotten a little more normal. All the there's more gates open again, and I think that processing's going faster. So I think that once that happens, the Canadians will feel more comfortable to come down again. Part of it was just the lineups were extra long. So it's a good time of year for them to open up again when people are more interested in coming down.
I know Cindy and I are planning on going up soon, so yeah.
Yeah, it was backed up for a few weeks. But I heard there was a new port director as well. But yeah, it's back to flying through again, so easy again.
So I had a question, Joel. It's very helpful on the financial statement where you have the 9-month outlook, for example, at the end of March, after 3 months, looking ahead in terms of cash coming in. Do you create or have you created a 9-month outlook for expenses throughout the rest of the year? Is that something that's doable, or is it just too hard to predict because of all the moving parts?
Actually, with those expenses, so when the budget spreads are done, so whenever you see any of these line items with the budget and how much the budget is this month or whatever, those are actually initially calculated based off of the, like, for example, the previous year's expenditures and when they happened during the month.
Right, right. No, I get that, but as you were saying, for example, we have the HR contract, which is an add-on this year, and we have some increased salaries, which is an increase from last year. So there are some things that we know are going to be higher. I don't know if that's a helpful tool or not. I mean, it kind of is what it is, but on the other hand, we have to kind of make sure we've got adequate, and luckily our UDR is usually bailing us out.
Because a lot of these big numbers, like for example, the salaries line items, like
Yeah.
we pretty much know what that's going to be with, especially
Yeah.
the union rates and how we budget for it.
Right.
It would be the large unknown things that hit, like the bomb cyclone and stuff like that, or revenue for whatever reason drops, like more than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
So are you asking, because we have a budget, but are you asking that budget to be broken up month by month? Because that's how we used to look at it when I was in business, or something else. I'm not,
Well,
because there is a budget.
right, but some of the things have changed. Our expenses, our operations have changed a little bit outside of the budget, is what I was getting at. So, I think partly what
Oh, I
Joel's
see what
saying
you're
is, at the end of each month, we proportion out comparison to last year, and then also comparison to this year's budget,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It gives us both of those numbers, and so we can see where we are at this point in time. If we were trying to prognosticate December 31st from this point in time based on the first 3 months of the year, yeah, it may be a futile exercise because of those unexpected
Yeah.
things that drop out of the sky, so to speak.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Good. Any other questions or for Joel? I really appreciate having the capital reporting.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And having access to that and being able to see kind of where we're at with. I did have a question on that capital project report on the first page. At the bottom 2 lines there that have to do with CVC. So are those just allocations of expenses that we so we've got 2024 CVC supplies and CVC wages, and then 2025 CVC supplies and CVC wages.
Yeah, so
yet-
the 2024, these will be conceivably closed here as we're closing the projects. There's still
Right.
924, so with that, like, I'll leave that open until the end, until we close it, in case Mike wants to put some, like some supplies or whatever to that line item. But yes, these are just the dollar amounts for 2024 and 2025, the actual amounts that the board approved for CVC. And obviously, it's broken out into supplies and outside contractors, and that the bottom line, like for example, this line, this is the wages, taxes, and benefits. So this will be Mike and his crew. So over the course of the year, as they work on CVC, then that portion of their wages will be moved away from operations and into that CVC capital line item.
Right, so it's an incorporated expense in their wages that
Yes.
is allocated to capital roads or whatever,
Right,
culverts.
yeah, and like when we do the budgeting, that's taken into account on the maintenance side of things for their budgeting, how much of their time, of course, I'll talk with Mike, how much of his time will be forecasted to be spent on CBC.
Yeah, yeah,
So the amount that you see, like the budget amount in the operation budget, is only the amount that is projected to be spent in operations for the maintenance staff.
right, right.
Remind me, what
Um,
does the acronym CVC stand for?
Culvert vegetation control.
Thanks, Rob. I was trying to Google that and I wasn't finding it.
Yeah, all the miles of culverts we've got along the roads,
Yeah,
a big project. They've really been working hard, grinding up all those branches that have been set along the side of the road. This Firewise project, they've really been working very hard, getting a lot done.
yeah, and
Hear that?
in the past, going back, even a couple of years ago, Firewise, we used to put that to UDR. There'd be a UDR request, and the Firewise work now is budgeted as part of operations.
Mhm.
I think that's good. It's is a real strong project for.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I think that's about. All right, so I think we've completed our agenda. So June 18th will be our next meeting. I'll try to make sure that we get a notice reminder when the agenda goes out and the agenda and addendums are posted.
And
Just a
Spencer said he would try
request
to
if
get,
we, go ahead, Taimi, I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, and Spencer said he was gonna try to get those Zoom, like the Zoom links out in the morning, because I think if you're kind of busy and kind of forget, if you get it in the morning, then you can work around it, but if you don't get it until just before the meeting, it's fine if you're waiting for it, but not
Yeah.
so much if you forgot.
Yeah, it's a good little reminder to work it into the day, hopefully.
Thank you. That's
No
great.
worries, I can take that.
Sorry I was late today, guys.
oh, and by the way, I should also point out, since we had the board meeting tomorrow night, if anyone was wondering, that I've rushed through the financial statement tonight, and I'm going to spend 3 times as long tomorrow night.
Yay! I love listening to you talk about it.
Yeah,
Tonight was just the brief primer version.
just the intro, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So fun.
Well, I will
Tomorrow?
I'll try to make tomorrow more brief. How about that?
Oh, I thought you said it was gonna be
You
longer.
may, he'll leave more time for questions. It'll get filled out with the questions, but.
Yeah, that's right.
Just the executive summary tomorrow.
I'm sure Linda will
so-
have something for you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll adjourn at 8:06 and see many of you tomorrow night.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
you.
Appreciate it.